Hey guys, it's Nikki here. I'm here to do the spoiler paired review for Queen's Gambit. As I mentioned in the spoiler-free review, I didn't really know much about the story other than that she was a chess prodigy at a time where there weren't a lot of women chess prodigies, and I really didn't know much else. My husband thought I'd really enjoy the show, so he watched it on his own, but then has been trying to not spoil it for me, which is very sweet of him, especially since I told him I wasn't going to watch it till I read the book. And because my husband adored the Netflix series so much, that's kind of why I picked the book up for this month. And there's something about this storyline, the chess prodigy / drama storyline, that I just felt would really hit the spot in fall, and I was right. So the story, as I mentioned, is you're really just following Beth on her way to chess superstardom. She's a prodigy, and she is just working hard to get where she needs to go. With that, I'll just go right into my likes to get them out of the way. I loved Beth as a protagonist. Seriously, she was so engaging and intelligent and just very complex, and I loved watching her interact with the chessboard. I loved watching her interact with people. It was just a really wonderful mix of like naivete and like mind-boggling ability. And she kept me engaged the entire book. I really can't emphasize enough how good of a protagonist I thought Beth was. My second like is the pacing. I found the pacing to be incredibly effective. It was just overall very wonderful for the story. It did such a good job of keeping the meat of the story and keeping the tension going without slowing down too much in between. Anywhere where it would have been too repetitious to go to multiple chess tournaments or multiple games, they would skip through them and kind of summarize them after the fact. I really appreciated that they did that because it kept the speed of the story up and helped keep you really engaged because you kept coming to those high tension moments without too much of a low in between, and it was just really effective for storytelling in this case. I also really enjoyed the variety of the cast. It was a really interesting mix of like brief acquaintances and long-standing relationships, and all these relationships have a really big impact on Beth, and I love that the duration of the relationship kind of impacted the gravity of their, like, it impacted the gravity of their impact. That is a terrible sentence. Oh my goodness. But everybody played a role. Everybody helped Beth move forward. Everybody kept the story engaging and Beth thinking and you thinking. It was such a great way to develop Beth's character and move the story forward. They just were the side characters were used to their fullest effect in this story. However, as I mentioned, there were some things I didn't like. I will take the time to mention here, I will give you guys a big trigger warning for substance abuse. It is very prevalent in the story through Beth and other places. And if that's something you struggle with, like, be aware coming into this. And that's my friendly trigger warning for this story. And now moving on to my actual dislikes. I'm going to start with the relationship. There's a few relationships where I thought they could have gotten more page time or a little bit more love and just developed a little bit differently. Overall, most of the relationships were handled really well, and I think that the really, really important ones were done phenomenally. But there were just a few little relationships that I would have liked to see a little bit more emphasis on, or got to meet the character a little bit more, because I think they could have played a much bigger role. That being said, that's pretty minor and pretty nitpicky. It's not a big issue. My big dislike for this book is something that's going to be very, very specific to me. I get a lot of anxiety around performance issues. And so anytime Beth ran into that in her games or in her confidence or in her everyday life, it hit really, really close to home. and I would have to take a break from listening to the story. There were several times at work where I stopped and started this book multiple times a day because I was really struggling with my own anxiety because it was raised so strongly by this book. And I recognize that this is something that isn't going to affect a lot of people, and that tension will probably help keep other people really engaged. However, it got to the point where my work performance was being affected by it, so I ended up really, really struggling with this part of the story. Granted, it was a little pretty few and far between. It was only really like the middle of the book where this was a major issue, but it definitely made my read of this a lot less enjoyable just because I was struggling with that as well. And now we're going to move on to the characters. I mean, I said basically everything about the characters that you already need to know. Beth is a wonderful and engaging protagonist. She was very complex and interesting to follow. I loved being in her thoughts and watching her look at chess and look at her life. But largely, I really connected with her on a stress level, which is not something I recommend doing with characters. It makes the read a lot less enjoyable, depending on the stakes. And the side characters, as I mentioned, were really awesome. They were varied, they were useful, they were a great mix of brief acquaintances and long-standing relationships, and they just did a lot for the story and for Beth's development. And honestly, the character work was, I think, probably some of the strongest. It was the strongest part of the book by far for me. That's all I'm really going to say here. I don't need to repeat myself too much, and I'll just jump into the wrap-up now. I'm going to give this book a 4 out of 5. As I mentioned, I really did overall really enjoy this book, but that trying to deal with Beth's stress and my own just really is what is pulling this down from a 5-star book. I really ended up struggling with it. I know this is going to be not an issue a lot of people necessarily deal with reading this book, but it's something that definitely made my read of it a lot harder. But there were so many other things to compensate. Beth as a protagonist, the side characters, the pacing of the story. There was really so much here to just dig your teeth into. And outside of being, even when I was really stressed, I was still really engaged in the story. And I think that Walter Tevis did a really awesome job with this. I'm super excited to start watching the show, which my husband and I should be doing over the course of this week. And I'm just really excited to see this kind of underdog drama on the TV. So with that, I will leave you guys here and see you guys in the next video. Peace.